we have any Trump fans here? We got some. Okay, what about fans of any other political personalities?
Bob Good.
Okay, we got Bob Good fans. All right, we're moving in the right direction. You know, Trump's generated an enormous amount of political energy. I've never seen that kind of political energy, certainly not in my lifetime in America. Does anybody know why? I think Trump represents something. I think people are placing something in Trump. Does anybody know what that is?
Trust.
Trust, yeah, very close. I would say it's hope. People are placing their hope in Donald Trump. Here's the problem. This is a constitutional republic. Trump can't save it. There is no one that can save a constitutional republic. Not by one man, not by a group of men. And by a group, I mean 51 senators, 218 congressmen, or 5 out of 9 justices. This is a government that was commissioned by we the people of these United States. And it can only be saved by we the people of these United States. There is no possibility of the signs that say Trump save us coming to fruition. Cannot happen. I think he's probably the best man for the job in the race at this point, but he can't save America. America must be saved by you. This is the great American experiment in what? Self-governance. Great American experiment in self-governance. What does that look like? What's going on here? Is my battery dying, or am I getting too far away? What does that look like? What's the problem in America?
Democrats.
Is it that, or is it us? Who's responsible for the condition of government in America? Who do I get to blame for the train wreck that is the government right now? Oh, now we're getting to it. So whose responsibility is it? Condition of government is our responsibility, correct? Okay. Well, we're trying to overcome, I would say, 100 years of indoctrination. We like to say that we have, what, public schools? Is that the right word for that? Yeah, indoctrination is much closer, and government indoctrination. Anytime you have a federal Department of Education, what is their purpose going to be? Preserve and protect federal power. Is that the model that we were entrusted with? What were we entrusted with? Doctrine of the lesser magistrate, right? Constitutional republic. So where does power belong? In the hands of people. What does that mean exactly? We say that all the time, power of the people. What does that mean? What does that look like? All right, well, let's start at the beginning. Power. What is power? Can anybody tell me?
Ability to affect the world around you.
You change things.
Okay, those are all good answers. I would say that power is force. So where does force belong? Doctrine of the lesser magistrate, right? Belongs in the hands of people, so what does that mean? Belongs in the hands of what? The least magistrate? Lowest form of government? Local government. There we go, now we're getting to it. So power belongs in the hands of the people where what? They can access it and influence it. So where does force of arms belong? Belongs in the hands of local government and state government. Because what did Travis say when he was up here? Madison said what? That the militia should rival the standing army what? 20 to 1? 20 to 1. So what does that sound like? Sounds like power belongs in the hands of the people, right? So how do we do that? How do we get power in the hands of people? Let's back up a little bit. What form of government do we have in America? This is going back to our indoctrination. Pull people on the street, ask them what form of government do we have in America.
Democracy.
Big banner on Fox News, that's right, you see it everywhere. Democracy, protect democracy, save democracy. Do we have a democracy in America?
No.
Are you sure?
Yeah. Republic. No. Well,
Ah, there we go. Yeah, it's functioning like a democracy, isn't it? But that's not what we have. That's not what we were entrusted with. We were entrusted with a constitutional republic. That's different from a democracy, right? Not the same thing? What's the difference? What's a democracy?
mob rule.
Mob rule. Yep, hear that all the time. That's pretty darn close. I would say it's majority rules. 51% tells 49% what to do, right? What about constitutional republic? How is constitutional republic different? What's the purpose of constitutional republic?
Limit the government. Limit the government.
Well, we got a document that tells us what the purpose of government in America is, don't we?
Protect our rights.
Does anybody know what that document is? Protect our rights. Protect the rights of who? The majority or the minority? Individuals, okay. Does anybody know what the document that tells us the purpose of government in America?
Declaration of Independence.
Declaration of Independence. Most people say it's the Constitution. It's not. What does the Declaration say? We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted amongst men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. When a government becomes destructive to these ends, it becomes the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute new government, setting its foundation on such principles as to them would seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. That's why we have government in America. That is the purpose, is to protect life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. We're going to do a quick poll. It's going to be multiple choice, so it's easy. If you had to pick the greatest threat to your life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, would it be Islamic terrorism, China, Russia, or your own government? Our own government? Well, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. How could our own government be the biggest threat to our life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness? Interesting. That doesn't seem like that's the way that's supposed to work. So, who has the power right now in America? Corporations. Corporations, interesting. Is it the people? Should be. Why don't the people have the power in America? Why is it that the lesser magistrate does not wield the power in America? Education is a huge part of it, because we don't understand what we've been entrusted with or how it works. All right, so I would argue that there are only two forces or powers on earth. We're talking about this idea of power of the people. There's only two forces or powers on earth. One of those is violence. Everybody knows that. There's no denying it. We've seen it acted out. We see it acted out all over the world, and ultimately we have since the beginning of time with Cain and Abel. Violence is a real force, a real power. What is the only other one? And I'm excluding the power of God. Power that man has immediate and direct access to.
Power of the pen?
Pen mightier than the sword? No, I don't think so. That's right, somebody said it. It's threat of violence. It's threat of violence. Teddy Roosevelt captured it perfectly when he said, walk softly but carry a big stick. Vince was nailing the exact same principle when he was up here a minute ago. The power that the American people are designed to wield is a threat of force or a threat of violence. That's what the American people are designed to wield. What part of the Constitution or the Bill of Rights do you think captures that principle perfectly? Second Amendment. The first half of the Second Amendment. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. As such, or because of this, the right of the people to keep their arms shall not be infringed. As you may notice, I added something in there. There's a semicolon in the middle of that statement. What does a semicolon mean? Going back to our indoctrination. It means these are two separate thoughts, but they can't exist apart from each other. They're not independent. They have to have both parts in order for it to exist. So that really should be read, as such or because of this, the right of the people to keep their arms shall not be infringed. The purpose of the Second Amendment is well-regulated militia. It's not hunting. It's not even personal or self-defense. It's corporate defense. That's the purpose of the Second Amendment. And does it say war or violence is necessary to the security of a free state? Is that what it says? No, it does not. It says the existence of the organization. Well-regulated militia is what is necessary. What is the reaction that you typically get? All right, let me give it to you from my perspective. So, I'm also the commander with Campbell County Militia. And the reaction that I typically get when I'm introduced to people like politicians, as the commander of the county militia, is kind of a, oh. Why do they react like that? It's like a dirty four-letter word, isn't it? M-I-L-I. Yeah, no, it's not, but it gets treated like that. What does that word carry?
Power?
That's right, carries power. That word carries a passive threat with it. Now, when I get that reaction from politicians that I'm introduced to, is it because somebody introduced me and said, "Hi, this is Dan Abbott, he's the commander of the militia. These people have guns, they're not scared to use them"? No, nobody's ever said that. They just say, "This is Dan, he's the commander of Campbell County Militia." I go, "Oh, militia." Why? Because that word still means something. That word still carries that passive threat. The existence or presence of the organization does its job. What is the purpose of militia? Why do we have militia in America? What would militia be called forth for?
Hurricane.
Again, well, yes, that's true, because they're community support organizations.
Safety and protection.
Safety and protection? Sure. All right, well, there's a whole bunch of reasons. What does the Constitution tell us? Does the Constitution tell us why militia should be called forth?
Yes.
Necessary for a free state.
That's right.
Article 1, Section 8, Clause 15. The militia shall be called forth to execute the laws of the Union, repel invasion, and suppress insurrection. That's the purpose. According to the U.S. Constitution, that's why militia is to be called forth. Now, are there a whole host of other reasons that they should be called forth because they're community support organizations? Yeah, of course there are. But the primary role, the primary mission, according to the Constitution, according to the men that bought this and paid for it in blood, is it shall be called forth to execute the laws of the Union, repel invasion, and suppress insurrection. Can all three of those missions be accomplished through walking softly and carrying a big stick? I would say yes. I would say absolutely yes. If you don't believe me, does anyone know who Admiral Yamamoto is? He was the senior admiral for Imperial Japan. A couple interesting things about him. One is that he was actually vehemently opposed to the bombing of Pearl Harbor. And he illustrated exactly why afterwards, because he said, "I fear we have woke a sleeping giant." Did you guys know that Admiral Yamamoto studied war in America before the Second World War? He made another very, very interesting statement. He said, "We would never invade America." Why? Because there would be a gun or a rifle behind every blade of grass. So, Imperial Japan understood that passive threat. It's just the Americans that have forgotten. If we want to see, I would argue that the Almighty built the finest republic that has ever existed in the history of the world. And He entrusted that to you and I. He entrusted that to the American people. And what does He command us about that which we are entrusted with? To be a good steward of that which we're entrusted with, right? So, when we look at the Second Amendment, and it says that well-regulated militia is necessary to the security of a free state, do we believe it's necessary that there is security maintained in a status of independence in order to preserve and protect what we were entrusted with? I would say yes. So in an effort to preserve and protect, we ought to have maintained well-regulated militia. I would say that's our responsibility as Americans. If we want to see the finest republic that's ever existed in the history of the world, that the Almighty entrusted to you and me, that was bought and paid for in blood, preserved and protected, should we not be maintaining well-regulated militia? Should we not take our responsibility to put power in the hands of the American people seriously? I think that we should. Why is there not well-regulated militia in every county and city locality in America? Because we, the people, have failed in our responsibility and our obligation. That's why. I'm going to place a little bit of blame here too. In addition to ourselves, I also blame the American Christian Church. Why? Why do I blame the American Christian Church? Because the American Christian Church has failed to build masculine biblical men. If we had a nation that was full of masculine biblical men, what I call biblical badasses, could this nation be conquered or ruled by anyone? Absolutely not. What does unorganized militia look like? Let's look at Virginia Code Section 44-1. Code Section 44-1 is the military clause in the Virginia Constitution, or the Virginia Code section. It defines militia as having three distinct components. One of those is the Army National Guard. One of those is the Virginia Defense Force, the VDF. And the third is the unorganized militia, which it further defines as being the whole body of the people, males ages 16 to 55, trained to arms. I lost my train of thought for a second there. Well, anyway, it's going to get worse as I get older. Yeah, that's what I keep hearing.
Why doesn't every county have a militia? Is what you're talking about.
Right. So every county should have a militia. These organizations should be made up of the whole body of the people. It says males ages 16 to 55. What does that sound like? Discrimination against old people? Let me caveat that. So that's actually a requirement. What that is basically a draft parameter. If you're a male and your age is 16 to 55, and the governor activates the unorganized militia, you're required to report. You will be showing up. And the National Guard is going to decide who they are and are not going to use. So does that mean that all of you old fogies that are past 55 can't participate? Nope, certainly does not. Females, can you participate? Yes, absolutely can. So yeah, that's basically a draft parameter. You know, I would consider there to be 3 characteristics that are necessary for militia to be constitutional, be necessary, be everything that it's supposed to be. One of those we just illustrated, pulled right out of Virginia Code Section 44-1. That it's the whole body of the people, or all of the military-aged males. The second characteristic is, if we take a look at this from a historical standpoint, every community in America had well-regulated militia. Now, why, though? Is it because they all felt that they needed force of arms? Is that part of it? Certainly is. Is it the whole thing? Nope. Somebody over here said it a few minutes ago, they can respond to hurricanes. You know, these were community support organizations. It wasn't just gunfighters. What do we have today that they did not have in the 1770s? And I don't mean cell phones, so don't anyone say that.
Fire department.
Fire departments, ambulance corps, huge law enforcement departments, standing armies, departments of transportation. Didn't have any of that. So what happened when a building in town caught on fire? Who'd they call?
Militia.
All the able-bodied men, right? Militia. What happened if a bad storm came through and washed out roads and bridges? Who'd they call? Able-bodied men, right? The militia. What happened if there was a threat that was posed to the community? Who did the sheriff call? All the able-bodied men, right? So these were not just gunfighters. It was a community support organization. They were made up of the finest members of the community. One other characteristic that I believe made these organizations everything that they had to be to have men like Madison write that they were necessary to the security of a free state is the quality of character of the men that led. Quality of character of the men that led. Who were those men in the 1770s? Sure, we can list names. Madison and Henry and Washington and Jefferson and Sam Adams and John Adams, and the list goes on and on and on, right? What did those men do? Who were they? Lawyers, merchants, pastors of churches, mayors of towns, sat on local boards, maybe U.S. congressmen. They were the exact same kind of, they need to be the exact same kind of men today that they were in the 1770s. The men who are already leaders in their community need to be leaders of the militia, because that's their responsibility. But what are we trying to overcome? 100 years of indoctrination. We're trying to overcome 100 years of indoctrination. I would guess that there's a whole bunch of people here that heard militia muster and were like, I don't know, not sure exactly what that is. Did they feel it was necessary to define militia in the 1770s when they wrote it was necessary? Certainly not. Why? Because it was everywhere. Every single community had one. Everyone knew exactly what they were talking about. Yeah, it was normal. That's right. So there was absolutely no reason to have to define it. Well, why do we have this perception like, maybe, I guess I'm going to go check it out, see what it's all about? Because we've been miseducated. Deliberately miseducated. Why have we been deliberately miseducated? Control. Tyranny. Yeah, because there are people who intend to rule, and if you have a country that is full of biblical badasses who have banded together and put force of arms in the hands of local government, that people cannot be ruled. Can't be done. I talked about threat of violence. A lot of people hear that and they go, whoa, threat of violence, I don't know about that. That sounds a little bit confrontational or something. I got a little carried away there. You know, we all understand this principle perfectly. We actually practice this in our everyday lives. We just don't correctly apply it. What do I mean by that? If you've got, Ethan, where are you at? Come here a minute. And is Janet here by chance? No? Okay. Well, we'll use him for an object lesson anyways. Come on up here, Ethan. Ethan, how tall are you?
6'4".
6'4", built like a brick house. If you see this dude walking down the street, is somebody going to try to rob him in all likelihood? Are they going to mess with him? Or are they going to give him a hard time? Probably not, right? Probably not. Now, what about that old lady that's under 5 foot tall and walks with a cane or a walker? Are they likely to target her? Likely to target her, right? Why? What does he have that she doesn't? He's got a passive threat. Now, is it because he's walking down the street and going, nobody mess with me? Does he have to say that? Or can he just walk down the street? He can just walk down the street, right? Now, Grandma with the walker may have one of those little crochet bags hanging on the front of it with her .38, but that's not the same thing. They may have to find out the hard way, right? Thanks, Ethan. Yeah, let's give Ethan a round of applause.
Good job, Ethan.
So we all understand this principle of this passive threat of violence perfectly. We just don't correctly apply it. It should be applied to the people in America. Teddy Roosevelt captured that perfectly. Walk softly, but carry a big stick. The big stick that the American people are designed to wield is constitutional militia. It's a well-regulated militia. It's force of arms in the hands of people. Let me give you a little bit of an object lesson here. So, if you take the 2021 census and you do the math and you figure out how many people there are in America, and let's use the parameters from U.S. Title 10, which is the 1903 National Defense Authorization Act, which does the same thing as Virginia Code Section 44-1, and it defines militia in the nation. It defines it as 18 to 45, able-bodied and trained to arms. Let's do some quick math. 2021 census. How many people fit those parameters in America? Any ideas? Guesses? 55 million. There are 55 million young men in America that fit those parameters. I use young men loosely. Is there any force on earth that could even begin to pose a threat to the United States of America with 55 million men at arms? Nope. In fact, I would go so far as to say that if you put every other force on earth combined, they cannot pose a threat to the United States of America with 55 million men at arms. Do we have anybody here that's sworn an oath of enlistment or commissioning oath? Quite a few. What does that oath say? I do solemnly swear to what? Support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same. Is there any force on earth that could pose a threat to 55 million armed Americans? No, there is not. Let's dig a little bit deeper into militia. Okay, so we still got the Second Amendment, right? Everybody's got guns. That's it, right? Everybody's got guns. We're good. Government will never mess with us. Oh no, wait a minute. Is a bunch of people with guns the same thing as well-regulated militia? Nope. I'm hearing a lot of no's. I'm inclined to agree with you. Now the people in the Ukraine have guns. They got them issued after the fact. Is that the same thing as having a trained fighting force? Is it the same thing as having a people that speaks in one accord? Nope, it's not. Do we make ourselves a resource? A whole bunch of people in a community that have guns, does that make them a resource to their local government? No. What happens when the sheriff's department or the fire department needs more manpower? What if half the roads in this whole part of the state are washed out? and we need to get access to all those people, do welfare checks on them. Well, then what happens? Who does local government reach out to? Do they just put out a call to people to show up? And then who organizes them? And who makes sure that they have radios and a way to communicate? And who makes sure that they are trained? I guess government will just do that on the fly? They'll make it up as they go? Well, what if local government, what if Lynchburg City can just call the commander of the militia? Say, hey, we need 100 people to help get into this part of the city that's washed out and inaccessible. Okay. Yeah, the militia will bring 100 packs. And we're going to have our own sustainment. We're going to bring our own food, our own water, our own medical supplies and training, our own communication system. All you have to do is tap into our communication system, and away we go. Oh yeah, and we have a rank and command structure. So we can communicate up and down through our personnel to you. Is that a resource? That's a whole different kind of resource. What about personnel with chainsaws? Does the city have hundreds of chainsaws that they can hand out? Nope. What about the militia? Does the militia have hundreds of chainsaws in their membership? Yep. I bet they do. Probably chainsaws that are owned by people that have used them before. Weird. It's almost like well-regulated militia is a community resource, if it's enacted the way it's supposed to be. One other thing I'm going to touch on just a little bit. I'm going to circle back to that threat of violence, the analogy with Ethan. Is that part of our responsibility as biblical men? Yes? Should biblical men retain a threat of violence? Should they retain the capacity for violence? Well, now wait a minute. We're told to be peaceful. The Bible says that peace is a virtue, right? Then we should be peaceful. What do you have to be in order to be peaceful? You have to be capable of the violence. It's not a virtue if you're harmless. It's not a virtue to be weak and pathetic. It's virtuous to be capable of violence but choose to be peaceful. That's what it means to be peaceful. Well, wait a minute now, hold on. The Bible says to turn the other cheek. Right, it does. What happens if somebody slaps me in the face? If another man slaps me in the face, what is that? Nah, I wouldn't say it's an act of violence. I would call it an insult. I call it an insult. What if Al slaps me in the face? And I look at him and go, is that the best you got? Go ahead, why don't you get the other side? Honestly, I think that's a little more accurate. Is the Bible saying that if someone intends to do harm to the weak and the innocent, that we should let it happen?
No.
Do we have a responsibility as biblical men to protect the weak and the innocent?
Yes.
Yes, we do. All of those who are inside our sphere of influence. So does that mean my family? Sure it does. Does it mean my church? Yep. My community? Yep. What if I'm outside my community? Anywhere that I'm geographically located? Yep. Still my responsibility to protect the weak and the innocent, correct? How do I do that? Well, part of it's physical fitness. What about a weapon? Can I protect the weak and the innocent if I'm not carrying a concealed firearm? Can I? Yeah, maybe somewhat. But I don't like the odds if somebody else has a weapon and I don't. So we should have the right tools to be able to protect the weak and the innocent. What about training? Is a firearm any good if you don't know how to use it? I've got this super cool looking historical sword with me today. I'll be honest with you, I don't have any idea how to use this thing. I have no training whatsoever on the use of an infantry saber, but it's really cool. So, should I have training on firearms?
Yes.
Yeah. What about medical? Preserve and protect life? Medical training? Absolutely. Communications. Does that enhance my ability to preserve and protect?
Yes.
Certainly does. So, probably have a radio and know how to use it. I think it's our responsibility as biblical men to protect the weak and the innocent in our sphere of influence. What about corporately? What does that look like? Well, I would say it's well-regulated militia. Because that's the next step beyond me being able to protect the weak and the innocent with my concealed firearm, protect my family. Can I protect my community? Do we have the ability to corporately take care of that responsibility to protect the weak and the innocent? We certainly do. We certainly do. And that involves being trained to arms. Yes. What about participation in stuff, well, they packed up now, but what about participation in stuff like food banks, helping out our community? Certainly. So, if you consider yourself to be an American and a biblical man, this is where you should be. This is what you should be plugged into. You should be plugged into a community support organization that puts threat of violence in the hands of the American people and gives the American people the ability to preserve and protect their communities and their republic. This is your job. It's your responsibility as a biblical man in America. Why do we not have it in every community in America? Because we have failed in our responsibility. There is no one to blame. We don't get to blame liberal Democrats. We don't get to blame government. We don't get to blame rhinos. We don't get to blame anyone other than ourselves. The condition of America is the fault of we, the people of the United States of America, because we have failed in our responsibility. It is high time that we start taking care of our responsibility as Americans and putting real power back where it belongs and giving ourselves the ability to preserve and protect what we have been entrusted with. I guess I'm going to wrap up with that. I do want to get somebody up here that, you know what, I'll just take a volunteer. If somebody wants to volunteer to come up here and close in a word of prayer. And any of you who did not have a chance to sign up, please come up here and fill out a muster card or sign up. Congressman, would you be willing to come up here and close in a word of prayer? For those of you who don't know, this is U.S. Congressman Bob Good. He's one of the finest patriots, one of the finest men that I know.
Thank you, Dan. I'm glad that Dan was between me and Vince, but Dan is a hard act to follow as well. I do want to say something since he gave me the mic. So, I thought I might run into a lot of politicians and candidates here. A lot of them won't show up to something like a militia. I see Jeff Helgeson, I see Marty, I see also in the back Peter Alexander, any other elected, Kurt Deemer right here, and I'm sorry, I don't know you, ma'am.
Michelle Lee Harvey, write-in candidate for Ward 4.
Michelle Lee Harvey, write-in candidate for Ward 4, and Justin back there, our supervisor from Campbell. Good to have Justin.
Over there.
You know, and I'm sorry, shout out, I don't know.
Tori Howard, Ward 2.
One more time the name?
Tori Howard.
Tori Howard, candidate in Ward 2. Okay? You know, it's funny, why do politicians and elected officials, even in, I'll say our party, because I'm going to guess that there's probably a lot of skeptical, cynical people here who aren't bound to a party, but I'm going to guess there's about 95, if not 99%, where you tend to vote for one party versus another. But why are politicians and elected officials afraid of something like this? Why are they? Because as Dan said, not because that's why they're afraid, but think about a militia is designed to keep the government in fear of the people. But not just any government for any reason. Yes, in a sense, yes. But the famous saying, when the people fear the government, that's tyranny. When the government fears the people, that's liberty. That is true. So if you are an elected official who's operating on a constitutional basis, and you believe that the purpose of your existence is to protect the freedoms of the people, the constitutional liberties of the people, what do you have to fear from an armed population? You should want that armed population, that regulated militia, to help you defend and protect that which you swore an oath to defend and protect. And I'm glad that Dan said, I was going to say this earlier, we talk a lot about the Second Amendment and what it protects, and we often leave off the first part of that, which is about the regulated militia. The founders intended and desired and supported that we would have this all over the country to ensure that we remain a free people. And you think, well, you might somehow say, well, in America, gosh, why would we need that? This is America. Well, what if the government closed your place of worship? Never seen that happen in the last few years, have you? What if the government seized your property? What if the government seized your firearm? What if the government seized your children? What if the government restricted your ability to assemble? That hasn't happened in recent times, has it? Or our freedom to worship, our freedom to travel and move around, our freedom to earn a living. Just look to Canada and look across the ocean, and you tell me that an armed population and an organized, regulated militia is not necessary to ensure we remain a free people. And anyone who operates in elected office within the boundaries and limits of the Constitution should celebrate and support that, not fear it. Because it's not just Democrats and the media who criticize and misrepresent what a militia is. It's so-called Republicans, who are the real problem, by the way. And I'll just add this, and this is probably a little bit personal, but I'll just add this. Is there not anything that a party can do in a contest that would make them ineligible to demand that you support their candidate? They can do anything? They can nominate someone through any method? Or is there no one that they could nominate that you would say, you know what? Saving the country doesn't mean having the majority for one party. Saving the country is what we do with the power that the people entrust to us for a limited period of time. It's not about having the majority. It's about following the Constitution. Are we pledging to a party? Are we pledging to principle? Are we pledging to morals? Are we pledging to our founding Judeo-Christian values? Are we pledging to the Constitution? Is that what we're pledging to? Or are we pledging to a party? So thank you for allowing me to be your congressman these last 4 years. It has been my greatest privilege in my professional life. And it is a privilege to be with you here today. You know, I got contacted by the media. I'm sorry, that went way longer than Dan told me, but I only got 3 months left, so what can you do to me? But a few weeks ago, I got contacted by CNN, who was doing a hit piece, a nasty hit piece on a couple of our militia friends in Campbell, which was my home county for about 18 years. And so a couple of days later, when I went to do the 9/11 Memorial Stair Challenge, which is brutal, Dan's done that too, I think, but I wore my Campbell Militia hat when I was at that event just to stick it in the eye of the media. It was like, because they said, oh, we saw some pictures of you on a friend of yours' Facebook page who's in the Campbell Militia. I said, well, let me just go ahead and wear my hat so you can see it. We don't shy away from that which ensures that we remain a free people, and that which is the greatest tool the founders gave us to ensure that those come behind us inherit what we inherited that was bought at great blood and treasure. So with that, let me pray. Lord, we thank you for the privileges we still have in this country. We thank you, Lord, for those who came before us, who suffered and died and gave and pledged and gave their lives, their fortunes, their sacred honor, so that we could live free. And Lord, we just ask that we would be faithful with what was trusted to us, and that we would do our part to ensure those come behind us live in the kind of America that we grew up in. That we would make it better for those who come behind us, and we wouldn't allow it to be further diminished than it is even today. Thank you for these patriots who've gathered here today. Lord, I pray that this would just be the start of a well-regulated militia right here in Lynchburg, my hometown. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Congressman. All right, if you guys will give me 5 more minutes, I want to tell a quick story that I usually tell as part of this, but I forgot. So if you guys are willing, give me 5 more minutes, let me tell a quick story. Cool. All right, so I was listening to a seminar that was done a number of years ago, and I can't remember the name of the gentleman that's teaching this seminar, but it's sponsored by the Liberty Seed Project. You can look them up on YouTube. And the gentleman's a historian, and he's talking about Lexington and Concord. And it's a very detailed historical account of what actually happened on that day, events that kind of led up to and set the stage for it, and some things that happened afterwards. But there were a couple of things in there that really, really stood out to me as being important. One of those is he was talking about the British column as it's retrograding back to Boston, as they're in retreat from Concord, where they got their butts kicked, and they're in movement back to Boston. And they're being harassed or bird-dogged by colonial militia. They're in the woodbine on both sides, and there's also one company that's in the road that's following the British column, making sure that they keep moving. And there were 2 things that you needed to understand about colonial militia or colonial military culture and colonial culture in general to really appreciate the story for what it is. One of those is that the word or order of a colonial officer was absolute law. If you violated the order that was given you, you faced a firing squad or a noose. Also, these men didn't know each other. They came from, relatively speaking, a huge geographic area, and they traveled to Lexington, they traveled to Concord, but they didn't know each other. Men didn't travel the way that they travel today. So, as this column's retrograding back to Boston, they encounter a bridge, and the bridge is far too narrow for the column, so the whole thing kind of bottlenecks and comes to a halt as they try to negotiate this very narrow bridge. The rear guard detachment for the British column realizes that the colonial militia is closing the distance. They're continuing to march in the road, even though the column has stopped. And so the officer decides, we're going to give them a volley and back them off. I'm not going to let them walk up on us. So he forms a firing line in the road. One of the colonial officers is in the wood line, and he's watching what's transpiring on the road below him. And he realizes, wait a minute, the order that I have been given is what? Everybody knows it, you just don't realize you know it. John Parker at Punkatassett Hill gave the order of the day. Very close. Stand your ground, do not fire unless fired upon, but if they mean to have a war, let it be here or let it be today. That was the order of the day. So that's the premise that they're operating under. They're harassing the British, but they're not shooting at them. So as he's watching what's transpiring on the road, he realizes, wait a minute, in order for me to adhere to the order that I have been given, which is to not fire unless fired upon, I'm going to have to watch the company in the road, who I don't know, take a volley. They're going to get slaughtered in the street before we can do anything. He makes the decision that he can't watch that happen. So what does he do? Gives the order to load and make ready. Open fire. And they do, and of course as soon as his men open fire, so did the men on the other side of the street, and probably the company in the road too. They cut down that rear guard detachment right where they were formed up in the road. There were no Americans that were killed there, or what would become Americans. And the guy teaching the lecture stops and he says, you know, he says, you hear all the time people talking about that lone shot at Lexington Green. No one knows where it came from. That's the shot heard around the world. This is the moment that America was born. He said, I disagree. He said, that was an accident. He said, this is the moment that America was born. The moment that a man decided that he would lay down his life for someone else's liberty, the liberty of someone that he doesn't even know, that he would sacrifice himself for that. He said, what other nation in the history of the world has sent their young men by the hundreds of thousands to die and soak someone else's dirt in their blood to purchase someone else's liberty? It has never happened. There is no other nation in the history of the world that has sent their young men to die by the hundreds of thousands and buy someone else's liberty and blood. Not to conquer, not to build an empire or to rule over another, but to purchase the liberty of another nation and another people. It has never, ever happened. I would take it 2 steps farther. What is the largest support organization for natural and humanitarian disasters anywhere in the world? Anytime there is a natural or a humanitarian disaster anywhere in the world, who shows up? The American Red Cross. The aid flows out of America by the billions of dollars. Anytime there's a natural or humanitarian disaster, it is C-130s and C-17s as far as the eye can see, full of everything you can imagine. Food and clothing and blankets and medicine and building materials and security forces and everything you can think of. What about the Great Commission? Has any other nation taken the Great Commission to literally send missionaries to the ends of the earth the way that America has? No, they have not. The Almighty built the finest republic that has ever existed in the history of the world, and it has been entrusted to you and I. Do we have a moral responsibility to preserve and protect this? Yes, we do. We absolutely do. If there was a mob of 1,000 evil people and they intended to do harm to the weak and the innocent, women and children, and there's nothing in the way except for me, could I run from the mob? Are they going to catch me? Nope. But can I run from the mob? Nope. Or do I have to stand here and do everything in my power? Even though I know what the outcome is going to be. Do I have a moral responsibility? Am I going to have to stand in front of the Almighty one day and give an account for my actions. Does God Almighty want to hear that I read passages like be strong and courageous and decided that the thing for me to do was to turn and run instead? Why? Because the alphabet soup may not like what I have to say? Because the current regime or administration may try to further an agenda? Because they may hurt my profession or my job? Because they may throw me in prison? Is that going to hold up when I stand in front of the Almighty? No, I don't think it is. We have a moral responsibility and obligations as Americans to do everything in our power, and the outcome doesn't matter. That's the part that he's responsible for. We as men in America are not called to sit on our hands and pray that God sends some other man to save us. If someone shows up here with a rifle, if some wacko shows up here to do violence, am I going to pray that God sends someone to save us?
They're already here.
They're already here. Told to be constantly in prayer, right? So am I going to unholster and go to work and pray that the Almighty guides my hands? Yeah. Have we been given every tool that we need to preserve and protect this republic in America? Yes, we have. So should we be praying that God sends someone else to save America, or should we get off our butts and stop sitting on our hands and start doing what is required of us, taking care of our responsibility as Americans to preserve and protect us? It's time that we start doing something. The outcome is not our responsibility. Our responsibility is to be biblical men of action and to do the right thing, to do what is morally right, regardless of the outcome. Let God worry about the outcome. You do what's morally right. At this point, I've gone way longer than 5 minutes, and I feel like I have to have somebody else close in prayer again. Thank you, guys. I appreciate you all coming. Please come up here and sign up. And, yeah, I'll be here. Oh, yes.
Next meeting.
Yeah, next meeting. Do we have a date and location for that? Okay, I believe we have not, we're looking at 2 weeks out, right? Okay, we're looking at 2 weeks out. We have not ironed out a location. If you have suggestions on a location, please come and see us. And yeah, we will be in touch as soon as this is humanly possible, as soon as we get a location ironed out for our first meeting. So yeah, we need you guys to participate and be on the team. Yeah, if you guys see trash anywhere around this area, please police call it, pick it up and get it into the garbage. We need to be leaving this at bare minimum as good as we found it. Ideally, it should be left better than we found it. So, and I will be up here if you guys have questions, comments, concerns, you want to talk to me, whatever, I'll be here.
All right, who else do we have here?
News to Share is the name of my outlet.
Oh, News to Share, okay. I know who you are.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Awesome.
I know who you are. It's a good thing.
Okay.
No, you do whatever you do. Yeah, look at you. You're a lot better than to look at the nine.
Okay, Dan, so you can just look at me for the entire interview. You can just say and spell your first and last name, and that you're the commander of the militia.
Sure. First name is Dan, D-A-N. Last name is Abbott, A-B-B-O-T-T. And I'm the commander with Campbell County Militia.
And so, Dan, what was the reason for establishing the group here in the city of Lynchburg today?
Well, the city was jealous because all of the surrounding localities all have a constitutional militia, and I've had a number of people approach me over the past year and go, well, you know, all the counties have one, why don't we have one in the city yet? And I said, well, you know, that's a good question. Let's have a muster, and you guys can form one in the city. So here we are.
And so, for folks coming out today, what was kind of the hope? Was it to sign up for the group? Was it to spread awareness for the group? Could you speak to the mission?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little of both. Yeah, this is like, I guess, the inaugural muster for Lynchburg Constitutional Militia, and so yeah, we want to get people to sign up and plug in and be involved and participate. And yes, a huge thrust of Constitutional Militia is education. And so yeah, we want to educate people on what militia is and how it functions and why it's important.
Dan, who would you like to see apply? Men, women, ethnicities, black, white?
Yes, all of the above. Code Section 44-1 says that militia is the whole body of the people. U.S. Title 10 says the same thing, that it's the whole body of the people. The second half of the Second Amendment says the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So, yeah, ultimately, come one, come all. I don't care what your political party affiliation is. I don't care anything about your sex, your gender, your color of skin. I could care less about any of that. I want people to come and be involved and participate because we're making our communities better and stronger. And ultimately, we've just got way too much division in America. And so, if we can find common ground of putting power back in the hands of people and strengthening and bolstering our communities, that's what we want to accomplish.
Can you speak to what type of community outreach efforts you may encounter? I know we just had the hurricane come through and that created lots of devastation. Could you speak to what your members could help in the future for certain situations?
Yeah, for sure. So stuff that we have already participated in is storm work particularly for like snow and ice storms that take down trees. We were heavily involved with the cleanup after the tornadoes in Bedford County. So that kind of stuff when emergencies arise, obviously definitely, as well as, we've had members work tons of motor vehicle accidents, stuff like that. But we also participate in stuff like, or sponsor stuff like blood drives and work with food banks on both collecting or taking in donations, facilitating that, as well as the distribution for people that are kind of shut in or whatever, can't get out. We've done a ton of deliveries, food banks, stuff like that. So really, ultimately, anything that improves our community. Obviously, we're huge into training as well. So we offer medical training, firearms training, chainsaw and disaster response training, communications training, all that kind of stuff, because it ultimately just makes better immediate responders, better citizens.
Can you speak to how many folks you think might be a part of this group at this point? Would it be dozens, hundreds, any estimate of that?
Well, I know that the surrounding counties, I can speak for Campbell County because I'm involved there, we're over 500 members. So, and yeah, I don't see any reason that you wouldn't have similar numbers for involvement in the city or in other localities.
So in the coming weeks, where do you hope that the Lynchburg militia will grow and
I just want to see them add more members and create a structure so that they can be a community resource, so that there's like a point of contact that the community can reach out to, whether it's the fire department or the sheriff's department or city council or whoever can reach out and say, hey, we have this need in our community, can you guys facilitate this?
Have you guys been in touch with any of those city organizations here in Lynchburg that you can speak to, working with them in the future?
So we contacted the city police department, and that's as much a courtesy as anything. Let them know, hey, this is something that we're doing. This is us. This is who we are. This is what our intent with the organization is. Just so that we're not blindsiding organizations. And of course, city council, I mean, you guys know there was a number of city council and a number of candidates for city council that were here. So yeah, obviously we liaisoned with them and are participating, involved with local government in that way as well.
Dan, how are the militia funded, even in counties, and how will Lynchburg be funded?
Unfortunately, we are self-funded, so we basically pay for everything ourselves. We do, of course, take donations. We'll take donations from really anywhere, yeah, we're basically self-funded. There's not really a dynamic for us to pull funding from anywhere else right now. So as we move forward with this, maybe we'll see that change at some point in the future. But yeah, we're self-funded.
And for those who might have concerns about having guns either concealed or out in the open, what would you say to those folks for your members, training-wise, licensure-wise, things like that?
Well, I don't think that there is any safer part of this city or any time that this park has ever been safer than it has been for the past 2 hours. because you have a very high density of people that are very competent, very professional, very sober-minded and self-controlled, and as a general rule have a high degree of training when it comes to stuff like firearm safety. So I don't think that the city could possibly be safer than it is when you have a whole bunch of people that are trained to a very high standard.
And do you plan to have meetings bi-weekly, a month? What's kind of the frequency that might become?
Well, in Campbell County we do monthly meetings, but it's ultimately going to be up to whoever the city of Lynchburg comes up with as their kind of leadership committee to determine how often they want to do that. I would guess monthly would be my thought.
And party affiliation is not an issue? Democrats, Independents, Libertarians,
No,
Republicans?
not at all. And in fact, I really like the idea of having people that sit on different sides of the political aisle because you get a little bit different perspectives. And I think that helps make organizations better when they get perspectives from multiple different viewpoints. So no, I could care less about party affiliation. I'll tell you right now, I'm pretty disgusted and fed up with all the political parties. George Washington warned us against those in his farewell address for a reason. And yeah, I'm not a big fan of political parties.
Could you talk about the ideal relationship between the localities and the county militias? Would you want them to be interfacing with police, city councils, that sort of thing?
Yes, absolutely. They definitely should. In fact, I would go so far as to say that if you're going to call yourself a constitutional militia, I think that you should be, at bare minimum, pursuing a relationship with local law enforcement, with local government, with state government. That's part of the responsibility as constitutional militias, that you're involved in that political process, that you are a community resource. And I don't think you can be a community resource if you don't have involvement with and participation with your local and state governments and law enforcement.
I saw that there was sort of a team of lawyers from Georgetown University who sent a letter to the city council here, something like that, essentially trying to lay out laws that they could use against you guys. Did you see that letter, and do you have any response to the way they did that?
Yeah, that's certainly not the first time that they've done that. I'll be honest with you, that's kind of a clown show. Apparently we have people that are under the impression that if they work for some legal something, that they can just make up whatever narrative that they want and then just peddle that narrative and go around, oh yeah, illegal paramilitary, and if they just say that over and over again, that something's going to happen. Campbell County Militia, Bedford County Militia, overtly public organizations have a fantastic relationship with our sheriffs, with our boards of supervisors, with our state officials, with our national officials. And you see there's a U.S. congressman that's here. And so if these organizations were illegal, law enforcement would have showed up and arrested me a long time ago. So she can continue to spout that narrative that she's created all she wants, and we're just going to continue to laugh at her.
Could you talk about the support of the congressman showing up here?
Yeah, that's fantastic to see our elected officials recognizing the responsibility that people have to be involved in local militia and supporting that. You know, I can't fathom what people have in their head other than having bought the lie that is being sold that would result in a politician not wanting the people to possess power, because this is America. So why in the world would local, state, or national politicians not be supportive of the people exercising their Second Amendment right? And this is America. That's the Constitution. It's the supreme law of the land.
Dan, in your last 5, maybe 7 minutes remarks, you seem to get a little emotional about standing in the gap, protecting, possibly losing your own life, defending others. Why did that appear to be so moving to you?
It absolutely is moving to me. You know, I asked for a show of hands there of people that have raised their right hand and swore an oath to support and defend the Constitution, bear true faith and allegiance to the same. And quite a few people that did that. I'm one of those people. So yeah, it is definitely an emotional issue for me when I think about all of those that have come before and the price that they have paid to preserve and protect what we have been entrusted with today. You know, I look at men like, there's a quote from John Adams in a letter that he wrote to his wife Abigail after the war while he was sitting on the Constitutional Convention. And he says, "Posterity, you will never know what it has cost my generation to preserve your freedom. I hope you make good use of it. If you do not, I will repent in heaven that I ever took half the pains to preserve it." And I look at a quote like that, and my thought process on that is that I will be damned if it is my generation that causes the sacrifice of men like John Adams to be worthless. If it causes men like John Adams to be repenting in heaven that they ever took half the pains to preserve this because I didn't do what was necessary to preserve and protect it. Yeah, that hits home. And so, yeah, it is an emotional issue for me when I look at everything that has been done and the price that has been paid over hundreds of years to give us this, to give the freedom and the liberty that we have in America, and to consider a possibility that could ever be lost is, yeah, it's weighty.